Welcome everyone to 5 things to consider when deploying AI in your enterprise. Really excited to be joined by Don, Dimitri, and Chris on our team here today. I will pass things over to Don to introduce himself.
Hi there, I'm Don Murray, CEO and the co-founder of Save Software. And yeah, I'm always an enthusiast about anything around data and FME. And with that, I'll pass it off to Dimitri.
So I'm scenario creation analyst, AI product strategist, and I probably need something with AI in my title as well.
We struggle with Dimitri's title. I mean, just he does so many different things, and he's definitely a product visionary, a guy who gets to play around, as does Chris, with just pushing things on the edge and then helping us use some of the stuff for the roadmap and that sort of thing. Gets really good conversations going. Yeah. So if you have any suggestions for Dimitri's title, please do chat them out.
Yeah, please.
Product visionary and AI advocate. That could be a good one. Awesome. And then, yeah, my name's Chris. I lead our customer solutions team here at Safe. So I work with a lot of organizations to make sure that they are getting the most out of the FME platform. And coincidentally, that also includes integrating with AI services. So I've been on a number of these in the past, and I'll probably continue to be on more in the future.
Yeah, it's a great topic.
Awesome. Thank you, everyone. Okay, so before we dive into today's content, I'll just take us through a quick run through of our platform, Livestorm. So if you do have any audio or video issues during the webinar, you can click that help button on the bottom left. There's just 4 simple steps to take. And share your emoji reactions with us during the webinar. We love to see those. You can use that react button on the bottom middle. I see some people have already been using that. Always fun.
I love it when they laugh at my jokes.
Yeah.
It's good not to laugh alone. Yeah.
The best part. And then we do have the questions panel as well. So we will have some time dedicated at the end to get to questions live, but please do feel free to chime in with questions as we go along. If you have any questions about today's content, and we might be able to get to some in the chat as well as we go through here. And then lastly, we have the chat tab. In the chat, you can keep letting us know where you are tuning in from. We love to see that. And we do have some polls coming up shortly. We have some scattered throughout the webinar today. So really excited to hear everyone's insights. So keep an eye out for those as we go along here.
Awesome. Yeah. So Elizabeth passes over to me. So here's the agenda. I will not read it all. You can just see in blue there some of the themes, right? When you're doing a task, how do you choose the right AI model that you want to use, right? And then multimodal, of course, that really means all data types. And so in the beginning, chat was really, we always thought about text, and now it's much beyond that. And then, how does data integration fit in with, these chat style integrations? We're going to looking about that. And then we'll talk about cloud versus on-prem. And you can't talk about anything today without talking about security. Every time we're going around demonstrating some of the capabilities with FME, data sovereignty, or where does my data actually go, is something. So we're very careful about that, but it's something that everybody wants to be aware of. And yeah, and then Chris and Dimitri throughout this are just going to give some amazing demos. Yeah.
Excellent. Okay, so at this point, I will prompt our presenters if they can turn off their webcams just to save on some bandwidth here for the remainder. And I will pass things back over to Dawn for our introduction here.
Perfect. Yeah, so I'm going to keep this at a high level. And yeah, just a few things. Let's see here. There we go. Yeah, so one of the things we really want to drive home today is to, show you how you can, implement AI in a confident manner for your enterprise to enable you to solve interesting problems. And every interesting problem with AI is always about getting data to AI so that you can, be successful in driving new insights and generating value for your company. And AI, of course, is the only thing we hear about almost today. But how can you use it in a way that's actually, wise and is going to enable you to get the most value? We touched on this one. How do you choose the right AI model? There's so many out there. What are some of the ones that you should use for different tasks? And again, Chris and Dimitri are going to show with that. How do you integrate AI with many different data types? Obviously, FME, we're going to show how FME can do that. protecting your data, doing it in a way that's secure and cost effective. And so the exciting thing about AI is with most technologies, the cost is coming down, but still you need to understand that. And then there's the forever, cloud versus on-prem discussion. And that is largely decided by you as in your organization. And of course, we work to support anything. And then how do you scale prompts and automated workflows to build agents and all these sorts of things, and really use AI to go beyond traditional, limitations of both data integration, but also with multimodal AI, be able to address new challenges. So some of the common frustrations with AI is really, at SAFE just this week, we talked about how starting is often the hardest thing. And you don't even know where to start with AI in the workflows. And, Chris and Dimitri will give you some examples. We also have lots of resources that we're going to be able to share. Yeah, I think we're all overwhelmed by there's so many options and this space is moving so fast. And I think, again, you want to be able to use tools like FME that enable you to switch out AI models and tools as they come in, because the best choice today may not be the best choice tomorrow. And flexibility and the ability to choose in a time of such fast change is key. And some of the things, our data is too complex or too varied. That may have been the case, but some of the things we are doing with AI is just amazing. And the way that AI can, pull information out of horribly unstructured documents that in the past you wouldn't have been able to work with. And then we'll talk about prompting, how we use prompting in workflows and things like that. And again, nothing is, you can't talk about anything without talking about data privacy and then in the cloud. And so there's a better way. Obviously, this is an FME webinar. And so we're going to show you how FME really reduces the friction. So you're able to get whatever data you want to the AI and whatever AI you want. So you're able to integrate with whatever model that you want to, meeting the security, scalability that you need. And of course, FME interface is no code. And there's the picture of our platform. And we have form where everything's written. We have FME Flow, which is where these things come to life across your organization. FME Flow hosted, of course, is the SaaS version of that. And new to the whole platform is our FME Realize, and that's where you can take any data or any data results and experience them in the real world. And that is part of the platform. We do not charge per seat or anything for any of this. It's just a new capability that we're really excited about on the enterprise platform. And we did a webinar on this, about a month ago, Elizabeth?
Yeah.
We did. So awesome. And data support. Oh, the graph one. Yeah, the graph one is the one I always pick on, because it's kind of a joke between Elizabeth and I, because we're always adding new data types, and we recently added graph data. You'll see open table formats there probably at some point, because I think we have one already. We're adding another one. And again, if there's any data type that we don't support, let us know, because it's the data types that we really enjoy adding, along with making it easy for you to work with the data. Okay, now consideration number 1 of 5, which is the role of multimodal AI. And I'm happy to pass that off to Chris Berger.
All right. Yeah, thanks, Don. We'll start off with the role of multimodal AI. And to start things off with this section, we're actually going to start with a poll, just to get a feel from the audience to see which is your top priority when choosing how to deploy your AI. So in this poll, just on the bottom right-hand section, I see Elizabeth has just launched it now.
Yes.
You have the ability to select multiple answers here. Sorry, Elizabeth, go ahead. I think you're going to add something there.
That's perfect. Yeah, so select your top 1 to 2. That helps gives us some insight here on what folks are most after, what's most valuable to you here. I'm sure all of the above, but yeah, whatever stands out to you the most as being your top priority. It looks
no surprise there. Security is taking an early lead.
Yeah, and integration with existing tools seems like those two are definitely top priorities for everyone. Awesome. Thank you, everyone.
Yeah, that's great. Okay, so yeah, we're going to have a couple of sections on obviously both of those topics. So this will be great and very relevant. As we're going through those topics, obviously ask your questions in that questions panel, and we will do our best to get to those at the very end in the Q&A. But just moving on, for the role of multimodal AI, we're going to start off with some key considerations. And of course, a couple of big ones come to mind in terms of richer automation and expanding on use cases. Starting off by really emphasizing this, one of the strengths of the FNE platform is that we allow you to pre and post process whatever your prompts need to be. So whatever the response coming back is, or getting your data prepared for a prompt. This is something that the FNE platform really has a lot of strengths with, because we have so many different readers to bring in your data, so many different transformers to transform your data and get it ready for prompts, or simply just upload the file to the AI service, depending on which one you're using. A couple of other ones when it comes to multimodal support in general is that obviously you can work with more than one agent in a process. So in an automation or even within a single workspace, you don't have to be restricted to just one service or one agent that you're working with. You can access multiple models, and we'll get into chaining requests later on in this webinar. And then, of course, obviously you get more value, more insights, and a lot more from your data by getting more of your data sets into these AI services and allowing the models to do a lot of the bulk for you. So starting off with the multimodal agentic APIs, obviously this is something that is supported by all of the top players. So OpenAI, Azure, Ollama, Bedrock, Google Gemini. We're just identifying that they all have slightly different names for those capabilities. Some of them have additional ones like web searching, file searching, and vision. Gemini has the ability to look through documents. They also have vision, audio, video, and understanding or reasoning. So there are a lot of different yet similar capabilities across these different platforms and services. So be sure to read the documentation to see which one suits your needs the most and see if it fits in with your organization's policies to use those services. Or if you're obviously stuck within the Azure environment, use what you can with that Azure service. There's no need to always switch over from service to service if that's going to be breaking any policies. Moving into a couple of key updates that allow you to get all of your data sets into these AI services, I just wanted to highlight a couple of key transformer updates. So we recently pushed out updates to the Google Gemini connector, and this is now fully multimodal. So you can add a path or a URL to the file and simply upload it to that service. And there's also tooling in this now too. So you can use the Google search grounding or retrieval. You can also use the URL context. We're looking to expand this to add custom tooling in there as well, but we're going to have to see the best way to implement this in the custom transformer layout. One thing you'll also notice that is standard across all the AI connectors is now in that advanced section, you'll see a max retries and timeout parameter, and that allows you to specify if you want within that custom transformer, there's an open API caller or an HTTP caller. If you want it to retry the request, should it fail? And if so, how many times? In addition to the transfer timeout. So if you're uploading really large data sets, you might want to increase that value if you're seeing any timeout failures. So that's the same thing with the Ollama connector. We also made it a little bit more multimodal here. So now it supports the vision capability. So you can upload files with the supported models. Obviously, you'll need to use a vision supported model for this to work. Otherwise, you'll get a 400 error back, I believe, or a 401. And then lastly, with the OpenAI connector, this is a new transformer. This is replacing the OpenAI Chat GPT connector, which was using the chat completions endpoint. This is now built on the responses API. We're still going to keep the Chat GPT connector. So if you're using that, it will continue to work. But this OpenAI connector is now built on that responses API. And I have a link to the responses versus chat differences. It's just a little bit more of a robust API and allows us to have a much simpler UI for this connector. So this now has actions for text, image, file, web search, reasoning. Basically, all the capabilities in that API are supported in this one custom transformer here, and it's available on the hub. I believe it was built in 24.2, so as long as you're using a version 24.2 or newer, you can go ahead and download that directly in Workbench. And to complement all of those new updates, we are also dedicating a lot of resources to building out learning resources so you understand how to actually use these new capabilities in these transformers. So one of my colleagues, Sienna, has already published a few of these articles, and we're going to continue to expand on these in the FME Academy. Again, these will be linked in the resources section at the very end, but we will continue to expand on these and I believe our target is the fall as for having an AI course specifically with AI available and ready for your consumption. So to start things off, you have a couple of tutorials that are targeted around classifying unstructured PDF files in addition to extracting insights from those unstructured documents. So of course, if you put 2 and 2 together, you can upload both of those workspaces into an automation and chain together a full process. So that's kind of just scratching the surface on what we're starting with. We're going to get into prompt engineering, web searching, embeddings, and then again, continue to build out more resources so you understand how to integrate AI services in the FME platform. And that brings us to our second poll of, I think, 3, if I'm not mistaken. So yeah, Elizabeth, go for it.
Okay, cool. So I've just launched that now. You should see it in the polls tab. What FME and AI use cases or concepts are you most curious about? A few different ones there. Maybe you have one in mind that you're interested to see, and in which case you can also chat that out. I think I did make it this one as well, where you can select more than one if maybe a couple stand out.
Awesome.
Okay.
Yeah, it looks like there's quite a bit for classification taking an early lead. It's kind of even across the board, but that one's definitely sneaking out a little bit ahead.
Yeah, and extracting insights from unstructured data. Oh, spoiler alert, we do have a webinar coming up on unstructured data in a couple months' time, so keep an eye out for that. We'll be looking to publish that one in the next month or so. See? Awesome. Thanks, everyone.
All right. And then, yeah, I think at this point, I'll hand it over to Dimitri for the first demo.
Lovely. Oh, Dimitri, you might be muted.
Yeah,
oh, no. Awesome.
So we talked about multimodal scenarios and multimodal models today, and I'm going to show a couple of scenarios where I test those capabilities. And we never showed, I think, we never showed any video analysis scenarios during our AI webinars in the last 2 years. So today I'm going to change this. So we can submit videos to some of the AIs, to, for example, Gemini. And I tried a few scenarios. For example, just generate a description, send a video, and get a description of what's going on there. You can extract, for example, sound. Someone is talking, and you would like to extract it, and it's totally possible. You can detect objects within video, within video frames, and get, for example, timestamps. And I will show a demo with that one. And you can have a series of questions, and you can submit those questions and ask what's going on, what is happening, do we see that, this or that in the video. We already showed a few audio analysis scenarios, for example, how we speak and transform that into a formal English. For example, I was spoken in Russian, not very formally, as a field worker during our AI augmented reality webinar last month. Or you can even estimate emotion or tone in the voice. For example, you have a support call, and you can see whether it's an angry customer or not. And we showed lots of image and document analysis scenarios, and I will show maybe just one. So here is our video analysis. Here I submit to AI. Maybe I will show you the workspace, the real one. Here it is. Here is the workspace. I prepare a video, and since FME does not directly support video, it would be not fair for me to just say to you, just process your video and reduce its size to 20 megabytes that Gemini consumes, reduce the frame rate, and so on. So I created a small custom transformer that does exactly this. You can choose a video, and you can choose a pretty big video. I tried up to 300 megabytes. and it reduces its size and reduces its quality to keep it good enough for AI to consume. And then I submit a prompt where I ask to extract the traffic lights along my drive to work, and output them as a JSON file. So, and the transformer does exactly this. So I send it to a Gemini model, and here I just use HTTP caller, and you can see it's not that complicated inside, but Chris makes it really nice by doing all this job for you in his Gemini connector. But the output from this workspace is this, just a simple JSON file, a timestamp from the beginning of the video and the light it was detecting, the eye was detecting. So, and now I can run a video with this, which is right here. So here is my red light. Here is my green light. And you can see on top, I change the intensity of those circles, red. And here in North America, we can turn on red light. We can turn right. So that's why you haven't seen green. So red was changed to green. Drive further. Another green, and it's a highway going to work. For some reason, it didn't notice this one, but it noticed this one. So for some reason, Gemini was returning decimal time. So after minute 59, I was getting, after second 59, I was getting second 100. So I was struggling with that for a while. Here comes red and green, and off we go. So this is it. So, but what can you do with that? So about 7-8 years ago, we worked a lot with videos. And if you would like, for example, map those timestamps, I created this demo. Here it is. You can download the workspaces where I trained FME to detect stop signs. Then I drove around having my GPS on, and then just match the video timestamps with GPS time and map all the stop signs. So you can apply this logic to similar workspaces, but now you don't have to train anything. You can use AI for that. Maybe another scenario here is what we did with FME Realize, our AR app. Again, Gemini model is very good with spatial components. So many AI vision components will be able to tell you what's going on in the image, but they won't be able to say exactly where it's going on. For example, here, I made a sketch where I say, like, do this or do that, and right here. So I take a picture, and I can localize using Gemini where those arrowheads are. So here I will draw them. Like cut grass. And that's, just with the Apple Pen handwritten text, which probably not everyone even can read. And you also, if you haven't attended our AR FME Realize webinar, you can see how it all works here. Here it is. So now, instead of just a sketch, instead of an image, I get like real features, which I can put into a database. Oh, and of course, when we talked about AI models, we can speak about, submitting PDFs. Here is, for example, where I take a PDF and ask to extract all the tables from it and return them as an HTML tables. Or we showed this example maybe a year ago, where we submit images to a local locally run model, Olama, multimodal, I think it was Lava, and ask for image descriptions, creative titles, and tags. And the whole structure of this HTML page, we ask ChatGPT. And we do that because our photos can be sensitive. We don't want to send them anywhere, even within our country. We would like to process them locally on our machine. So that's what we do with the images. But the structure of this page, HTML, CSS, JavaScript, SQLite database to store all that, it was all created with ChatGPT for us because it's not that sensitive. So now I pass it back to Chris.
All right, thank you, Dimitri. Let's get the slides back up here. But yeah, as we're making this transition, this is just kind of summarizing all of the basically what we just went over for the multimodal automations portion here. So again, you have the ability to have richer automations and improve upon your use cases. Obviously, this is something that allows you to string together multiple agents or use different services within that same process as well. So yeah, as mentioned here, you can use both fine-tuned models as well as large language models here too. So yeah, there's a lot of opportunity for whether you're just accessing those general models or if you want to do continuous or batch-based training in this. So FME gives you a lot of flexibility with how you want to integrate with those files. The second consideration we have is data integration with AI versus the chat style integrations, which is what people are generally more familiar with here. So I won't get into too many details. Obviously, the slides are available for you to download, but at a very high level, chat completions are more human-driven. They're very interactive. It's very similar to what you've been interacting with on those chat interfaces and any application that you've been working with, say like Jira, for example, or Google Gemini within Gmail. It's more interactive. There's a human element to it. It's more conversational and multi-turn. Data integration, on the other hand, is more AI for data integration, rather, is using more of a system approach. And so this is where things like structured outputs are really important here. It allows you to get a predefined output that you can then use downstream for consumption. There's a lot of differences between the two, but we'll get into how you can kind of use both within the FME platform here. So some examples for the chat completions is within Workbench, we have AI Assist, and AI Assist has been around for, I put 25.1 here just for the new capabilities, but there has been AI Assist for SQL, Python, and regex as well since I believe 24.0. I would probably have to fact check myself on that. So this is just helpful for building out those more coded elements of the FME transformers effectively. What we have coming forward is now the AI Assist, where it's more of a chat function within Workbench. And if you attended the UC, you may have seen a sneak peek of this. So I'll show you this in the next slide. I also have an asterisk here at the very bottom for the OpenAI ChatGPT connector. Of course, that was using the chat completions endpoint. So yes, you can do that in a workspace as well using transformers. So AI Assist specifically within Workbench, you have a number of options here. You can use it within that AI Assist option, again, for Python, SQL, or regex, if you need help constructing those little snippets of code. If you're not familiar with any of those three, it's a really easy and user-friendly way to get them built into your transformers. What I was just referring to is new as of 25.1. And this is where you'll have an AI Assist window on the right-hand side of your Workbench. So you can talk to an agent and see what's happening in your workspace, ask specifics about a transformer or a group of transformers. You can multi-select, add them as context to that window, and get more informative and have a conversation with Workbench effectively to understand more of what's going on within that workspace. And here's the asterisk, the chat completions endpoint using the OpenAI ChatGPT connector. The reason there's an asterisk here, because it is conversational again. So with this transformer, you may have noticed there's that chat history option. This is the reason for that. If you need multi-turn, you can do that using that chat history and provide the full context of the conversations you've been having. Of course, this comes into the question of, should I be looping? And if so, how should I loop? We have a webinar dedicated just addressing looping. I'll also touch on it very briefly in a couple slides here. But in short, yes, you can still have conversations using transformers technically. Text generation, on the other hand, this is more for that data integration approach. So this is using the other AI connectors we have. So Gemini connector, OpenAI connector, not the ChatGPT one, Llama, Bedrock, and so on and so forth. Those are used more in that workspace setting where you're generating an output ideally something that's structured so you can use it downstream for consumption. So a couple of examples of that would include generating lookup tables to perform schema mapping on, expanding on acronyms. I saw Bruce in the comments, you mentioned that you're interested in data standardization, like getting proper names. That's one great example of that, is taking things like an abbreviated name and giving it the full name so you can do more sophisticated processes on it. Other things include standardizing inputs, obviously columns, values, and fuzzy string matching too. All of these things are more realistic in that text generation context rather than a chat context. So this begs the question, why can't I just chain services together using text with the text generation option? And the answer is you absolutely can. So there's no reason why you can't do this. A couple of common approaches that we have seen for this are going from a generalized model to more specialized models for things like reasoning. And this could be for a similar reason, going from a low-cost model to a high-cost model. If you just needed to do a large bulk of the work with one of the generic models for one of the large language models effectively, and then you want to dive into more specific models, this is where you can chain multiple together. And again, using those structured outputs, it makes it a lot easier to accomplish this because you can build in more sophisticated logic to kind of reroute where those requests are going within the workspace or within your automations. So definitely keep that in mind. This also brings up the question of orchestration considerations. And of course, on the FME flow environment, you have the ability to do things like parallel processing, as well as choosing the processing location. So you can make use of the remote engine services for that. If your data needs to reside in a specific area or a specific AI service that is being called, you can dictate where all of those requests are ending up and which services they're interacting with. So again, a lot of great links we have are embedded in this slide deck. We can't get into all of these, unfortunately, but take a look at the linked resources. They'll be extremely helpful there. This is just showing another way of routing data between workspaces. So in the slides previous to this, I was showing it within a workspace environment. So that's within that job that you would publish to FME Flow. You can do the same thing on the automations canvas using separate automations. And this is great for traceability, for logging purposes, and just so it's a little bit clear to understand where things are happening in that overall process. So you can route data between workspaces using an FME Flow automations writer feature type. So that's something that, again, is linked in here. Have a look at the article. It'll be very helpful. And I also touched on looping very briefly there. You have a number of options with that. You can do it, technically speaking, within a custom transformer. You would have to nest an AI connector within your own custom transformer and create the loop there. Or you can also loop with automations too. So you have a number of options with how you can create those loops if you need to do things like chat style integrations, or if you want to chain together text generations with loops, you can do both options realistically here. All right, Dimitri, I think this one's over to you.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. So, and yeah, we talked about chat style conversation with AI models. And that's what helps me to expand FME capabilities. I think we already showed these ones, but if you're new, so we added, for example, several custom transformers which do not include AI component in them, but they were created using AI. So, for example, FME does not support USDZ and GLTF reading. I really hope we will change that soon, well, as standard capability. But those are important formats in today's world for 3D, for augmented reality, for virtual reality. And that's why, I tried to change that, and I asked ChatGPT, how can I achieve this? And ChatGPT suggested using Blender for that. And Blender Python is an option, but that would require taking data out from FME, going to Blender, learning some Blender. And if I would like to automate that, learning Python for Blender, and that was just too much. So instead, I asked ChatGPT to create, actually together, like in a conversation, we created Python Blender scripts, which can read USDZ files, transform them to something that FME understands, and return back to FME Flow, and that's how we get USDZ and GLTF readers. So all you have to do is to install Blender, and that's it. You don't have to know Blender, you don't have to know Python. It all is happening behind the scenes silently. And I was really encouraged with the results, and I added 3D model renderer, so now you can create really high quality 3D image renders with FME. using your 3D data, and you see some examples right here, up to 8K images. Or you can, for example, take the same models and having high quality output in video form. You can, for example, set your lights, you can rotate your model, and it will generate some HTML snippet to play those videos right inside the transformer. And again, you don't have to do anything. You just have to send a 3D model there, set your parameters, and get the video out. And right now is happening this. So I'm testing this Open3D point cloud library to process some point clouds. And here is you see an example what you would get from just pure FME, this tulip-like mesh from the point cloud when we don't have normals on points. But if we estimate normals, we can get a much smoother mesh, a correct mesh, which you see right here on the right from that tulip. You still can see some strange thing is happening on the top, but that's just the cloud, which was very dense, and I wasn't able to remove it. But then we can also add clustering, where we would cluster points according to their neighbors. And you can see the results on the right. So I don't have these custom transformers yet, so because I'm just playing right now with this. So let me know if you are interested in having them in Hub, FME Hub. The problem with that is that the installing Python wasn't too smooth. But if you're fine with that, then I can wrap them as custom transformers and publish. So let me know, please.
Awesome. Thank you, Dimitri. And then, yeah, just to summarize this section again, for AI-powered integration, you kind of have to consider what's the purpose. Does it need to be human-driven or system-driven? As Dimitri just mentioned there, you can absolutely use a combination of both. And we have some tools built in for both options in the FME platform. Output and structure. I think this is another key one. I'm a big fan of outputs, structured outputs. This gives you a little bit of more structure and easier use for consumption downstream. Or do you need that flexibility? Do you just need some chat integrations and more conversational style approaches to understand what you're trying to do for the process? So yeah, it just goes over a little bit more of if you need to be more conversational, or if you want your process to be repeatable and have your AI services kind of build out that process and speed up processes for you. Okay, getting into consideration 3, choosing the right AI model. This will be a relatively quick section. Really, the answer here is we can't give you that answer. You know what task your model needs to perform. And unfortunately, huggingface.io has millions of models to choose from, but this is also a huge benefit. This allows you to choose the best of breed per task, not per process. So as we've mentioned in the previous slides, you have the ability to chain multiple services together, whether that's going from service to service or simply from model to model. Always do your best, do your research on which model is most performant for your specific task, and go from there. The Azure, Amazon, Ollama, Google, and OpenAI platforms all also have model marketplaces. So you're not just stuck with the generic models. You can deploy other models. For the most part, most of them are also on Hugging Face. So you see the same things across those services. Again, do some research, see which models have the best performance for your specific task at hand. And yeah, you can filter by task, operation, or cost, whatever consideration is most important to you. This is kind of just going over, I think this is a screenshot from Azure, but it's just showing the description of what each of those models do. So it gives you a very high level overview of what each model already does for you. If you need a model simply to do routing for you, Microsoft already has you covered for that. You don't have to build in the logic, just use their model router, for example. You can then send your video files to Sora, or your reasoning prompts to DeepSeek, for example. You have a lot of flexibility with chaining these together and using multiple services and multiple models within that same process. One example of that, I'm sure we've talked about this many times, so most of you have likely seen this. This is just the service cards from the UK power networks. And our partner at Tensing actually found that you can, by using multiple services within the same process, you will get different performances and accuracies from those models, even if you're looking at things like scanned files. So what they noticed was for files that were, or for service cards rather, that were scanned after and dated after 1938, they were more performant in Gemini 1.5. And for ones that were before 1938, I believe Gemini 2 was the more preferred approach. Again, they just got higher accuracy with those. So they ended up splitting out that process into using multiple models so they could get higher accuracy in their output. The other consideration of this, obviously accuracy is one, cost is the other. You can send the same amount of records into each of these and get different costs for those. So that also might be a consideration for your team. Obviously considering performance and cost is paramount to your organization. So yeah, key considerations here are cost and performance for things like model strengths, what are their weaknesses, how accurate are they? Do you need to have the customizability to fine tune them, or are you happy with the more generic LLMs instead of going to small language models? So you have a lot of options here with which models you actually want to interact with. And of course, we're getting into deployment, security, and sovereignty in this next section here. So we'll get into consideration 4, which is more for cloud versus on-prem deployments. And obviously security is front of mind for this as well. Before we get into it, we have one last poll, and that is which AI services are you currently using or exploring in your workflows? So we just want to hear from you, just so we have a better idea of which services should we ideally look to add more support for, more learning materials for. This will give us a better idea of where our current landscape of customers are interacting with AI services. Ooh, we have a pretty even split here. So
Yeah.
everyone's at about 20 to 30%.
Yeah, and it could be folks have selected kind of all of the above almost. It's hard to.
That's true too, yeah.
Yeah, like you can select multiple, so quite a spread.
That's great. Yeah, the nice thing is we have support for all of these. Obviously, the Azure Foundry AI that is kind of renamed, I think, for the 3rd time in just as many months. So we're getting more to a space with our knowledge resources that are more generic as possible. So even though a tutorial might be built with Gemini, it should be just as applicable with Olama or Bedrock or Azure, essentially. So yeah, we're kind of aiming for that direction, but it's always good to hear from you which services are you interacting with more.
And Chris, it looks like a handful of people, especially in the chat, have highlighted Copilot as well.
Copilot, yeah, that's a pretty common one.
Awesome.
Great. Yeah, thank you so much for that. All right, so yeah, cloud versus on-prem. Realistically, this is more of an IT discussion for your team. Again, we can't really force you into one or the other, but let's just talk about some of the facts between the two. Cloud gives you access. This is something that gives you access to more cutting edge models. There's a lot lower startup costs, generally speaking, and they're easier to scale. Obviously, you have the full power of cloud computing at your fingertips, so you can send out millions, thousands, or millions of requests at the same time, and you can expect that you're not going to have to deal with any hardware to scale this up and get performance back. Of course, there's a couple of considerations with this as well when it comes to data residency. So you need to be a little bit more careful with where you are deploying these models and what data warehouses they're actually running in. So it can be a little bit more tricky to work with. In comparison, on-prem gives you control. So you have higher control or the governance of this because it's all housed either within your own virtual private cloud or even in your own office if you're working off of physical hardware. So this is a lot better for regulated industries. Obviously, it also avoids things like data egress issues if you're working with non-cloud sources. So technically speaking, you can experience less latency here. These can be more ideal for like long-running tasks and more predictable workflows that you know are living all on-prem. So yeah, there's potentially a higher startup cost with this because you might have to front the physical hardware for this, or again, if you're working with virtual machines, you might have to install larger spec machines. So there might be a bit more cost associated with it. But again, you have the option and full control of where the data is actually living with this one. Well, what about a hybrid approach? Because this also gives you both. This is great for using things like the cloud for general requests where there are no data sovereignty issues. You get the power of scalability and cutting edge models, but you also have the ability to run some of your more sensitive data sets or private, private cloud environments. You can run those in isolated environments. Again, I just have a little bit of a shout out to the remote engine services here. We do have the ability to run a hybrid setup with FME Flow And this allows you to define where your jobs are also going to be running within that flow environment. So within your automations, if you need specific jobs to run on-prem or access a service in a specific data warehouse, using things like the remote engine service can help make sure you're staying within those constraints. And then, yeah, of course, we've primarily been talking more about the services rather than the individual models here. Obviously, we are fully aware that there are millions of models out there, but the supported services within FME are basically all of them. I'm sure a lot of you are aware that we have pre-built connectors for all the big ones. So Gemini, Bedrock, Azure, OpenAI, Mistral is a new one that was posted by one of our partners, I believe Anthropic as well. So we have our awesome partner network who are continuing to produce these custom transformers and publish them to the FME Hub. And we ourselves are also creating more and more content and delivering it on the FME Hub, just so it's a little bit more approachable to our users. Of course, if we've missed any of these and you have a specific AI that you're trying to interact with, you can do that with the Python caller or Python creator if there's a Python API for it. Or if you're working with a REST-based service, then you can use the HTTP caller transformer or an open API caller as well. The open API caller is just a little bit easier to get up and running with if an open API specification is already available. So yeah, we connect with all of them across the platform, of course. And then again, just reiterating the key considerations here, the cloud is great for agility and for innovation. If this is something that is paramount to your organization and you don't have quite as strict of data residency considerations, you can definitely use the cloud and kind of go from there and not have too many concerns. On-prem, by contrast, is great for governance, or if you need full control of your data sets and where they're actually running, you know it's not leaving your VPN or your VPC. It's also staying fully on-prem if that's something that needs to run in-house. Again, you have the opportunity to orchestrate entire processes here and dictate where your jobs are running between that on-prem or cloud environment. If you need to have a hybrid setup, this is something that you can obviously configure with automations. Definitely look at those resources that we have linked throughout this as well. And we're on to the last consideration. So we have slightly touched on this earlier. This is kind of, in a sense, similar to the chat versus text generation consideration. So this would be batch versus manual prompting and using prompts for scalability and just general reusability. I'm just going to point out a couple of great resources that you have here. And this is going to be oriented towards data-driven prompts and flexibility. So starting off, most of you are probably familiar with this already. As you're building out your prompts, you have the ability to concatenate your strings in there. So you can put in your own block of text, you can add attribute values, add the schema, add the geometry, all independently, and create very robust prompts using things like strings, attributes, and parameters. And parameters can be things from user prompts if you're working with something that needs a user's input. They could be the FME parameters if you want to provide inputs from that workspace itself, as well as deployment parameters, and I'll get into that in just a couple slides here. Second key thing for this, again, big advocate of structured outputs. I'm sure most of you have heard me say this multiple times throughout this webinar specifically, but this is great for batch processing because it standardizes your outputs and allows you to have a structured and well-defined output from the model. And it's just way easier to work with downstream, whether you're needing to fragment those responses with a JSON fragmenter. If you just need to flatten the attributes, you have a JSON flattener in the workbench environment as well. Or if you only need one specific value, there's the JSON extractor that is really easy to work with. So you have great tools at your disposal within the FME platform to make sure you're getting the data out from your structured outputs and into a format that goes into the system destination as required. So JSON fragmenter and flattener are great to kind of format the data. Then you can use a simple writer to get the data into that system. And the deployment parameter store. So this is great for reusability. So this is with FME Flow. Essentially, you would create a text parameter on your FME Flow instance, and this would be connected to your FME form. Anyone who's connected on FME form and logged into that same Flow instance, it allows you to store prompts. You can store JSON structures or the structured outputs. You can store your API keys here. They can be stored in a password parameter for those deployment parameters as well. And it just makes it a lot easier to use these AI services throughout your organization. And it gives your FME Flow admins control over what's actually contained and the value of that. So if you need to make prompts reusable or make JSON structures reusable throughout your organization, definitely take a look at the deployment parameter store. This is a great way to use this and make it more accessible to users in your organization. And with that, I will hand things over back to Don.
Yeah, thanks, Chris, and thanks, Chris and Dimitri. Wow, amazing, what you can do with FME and multimodal data. So that's really good. So now I'll just do some really high-level conclusion slides here. And so really, the thing we were really trying to drive home is that there's no one AI that's going to solve all the problems that you need to tackle. There's so many out there, and different AI tools have different strengths. So even we've had some customers who have used 3 AI to solve one particular problem, different aspects of one problem. So it's really good to remember that, and because you might have AI what's good for one thing, and then you go to try to use it for another, and it just doesn't quite do it for you. And now in the world of multimodal AI, that is more true than ever. So you really need to understand the difference. What are the different AI strengths? And certainly we've done quite a number of webinars and shown, and we've talked with lots of customers who use FME with different ones. And so we'd be happy to share what we've seen. We're not going to say that our answer is yes, for this task, this is the best one. We're just going to say that this is one we've seen other customers have success with, because again, things are just moving so fast. And yeah, and of course, you have to plan your deployment strategy is cloud versus on-prem. So we talked about that. And then we showed how you can, scale to really, with automations and things, to really make this possible to use. Yeah, so good. And yeah, a little bit about us. Obviously, if you don't know who we are, and this is your first webinar, you'll be happy to know that we've been around for 30 years. So we're definitely, experienced working with data. We have 25,000 customers around the world and 200,000 users. Our community is amazing. I bet you that number is even low because it's growing so quickly. It's hard to keep up with. And yeah, we're a Canadian company. We've got people all across Canada, from Saanich on the west all the way to St. John's, Newfoundland on the east. So there you go. So yeah. And we're known as the only all data, any AI platform. And I think we kind of showed that today. Whatever cloud you want, whatever kind of data you want, both in terms of velocity and data type, and then any AI technology. And there is a ... down there somewhere, but we ran out of space for it. But it's really anything you want to use. And if you are working with, an AI, or you find an AI technology and you want FME to connect to it and you don't see it, let us know. We're adding them all the time, and they're generally very easy for us to add. And yeah. And so with that, I'm going to pass it back to Elizabeth.
Lovely. Okay, thank you, Dawn. Okay, so just taking us through some resources here, and we should have a few minutes at the end to address any questions as well. So just a shout out to the audience. If you do have a question top of mind, get that into the questions tab. But in the meantime, I just wanted to take a moment to highlight our past AI webinars. We do try to host these quite frequently so that we can keep you updated on all things AI, but just a few highlighted here. You can, of course, download the slide deck to access those links directly. And at SAFE, we're all about free resources. We do have a lot of great upcoming webinars, as well as some available on demand. And by some, I mean very many. So feel free to check out that page, and you can use that search bar to search through depending on what topic you're looking to learn more about. In terms of next steps here today, we'd love to help you get started with anything data or any questions you may have, info@safe.com. And our FME Accelerator course, it's just 90 minutes and free of charge, and it's a great place to learn the basics of FME. Claim your community badge. So if you're a member of our community, as a thank you for joining us today, we have a badge code here you can redeem. We'll drop that into the chat now. If you aren't a member of our community, I would highly recommend that you give it a look. It's a great place to network with other users as well as experts alike. Okay, with that, I will invite our presenters back on stage with their webcams, and Natalie, if she wishes to join us from the back end here as well. And we can take a look over the questions that came in together. So it looks like Natalie killed it on the back end. I think we've gotten to them all so far anyway. Is there one in particular we might want to get started with highlighting here, team?
Let's see here. Apologies if my webcam is not working here. I can see the light, so it should be working, but I don't see it on Livestorm.
All good.
I think we have them all answered here pretty well. I think there are a couple of good points just from Bruce around using AI Assist for xQuery, and this is a really good question. So awesome to see that Natalie has confirmed that we're looking to add support for that. With that in mind, if anyone else has any specific capabilities that they're looking for or specific areas that they would like to see AI Assist, please do let us know. We would love to take that feedback and provide that to the product management team to see where we can add more enhancements for that.
Excellent. Okay, just doing a final scan through here. Yeah, I think we've gotten to them all, unless there is, any others we want to highlight, team. I mean, it looks like we've addressed them all so far. Maybe while Chris and Dimitri are doing a final scan through here, I'll just mention that if you do have any questions come up after we've wrapped up, feel free to drop them in. We will leave things running for a couple minutes past the hour. So feel free. We'll get to any that we can in the chat afterwards as well, or you can email us anytime. Yeah, it looks like we're all good, team, to wrap up.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks everyone so much for spending the last hour with us. It's been great.
Really appreciate your time, and Chris and Dimitri and Dawn as well for your time in preparing and presenting the content. And Natalie as well, thanks for helping us with questions. Hope you all have a great rest of your day. And if you do have a moment to fill out our webinar survey, we really appreciate any feedback. It helps us continually improve our program. Thanks, everyone. Bye for now. Thanks.
Everyone.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.